Good, good. Kathia Woods Cup of Soul show. It's
Cup of
interesting
Soul,
that,
huh?
yeah, we need a little bit of warmth for our soul these days. I never thought I'd say that, but today it
Yeah,
fits.
yeah, it does.
Um, Ironically, we are speaking today. I feel like sometimes art and history intersect, and your film definitely fits that definition. But first, let's start at the beginning. What made you want to make this film? Because there've been a lot of films about Martin Luther King, especially with his arrest, getting arrested, and how the government felt about his movement. Talk a little bit about that, please.
Well, the whole idea of film, the whole idea of the film came about when my producer of the film, Ben Hadine, read this book about MLK being surveilled by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. And he said to me, he gave me a call. He said, "Man, I think I found our next film." We had just finished a film called Two Trains Running. And I read this book about MLK and the FBI, written by David Garrow, well known, well respected historian. And I agreed. I said to Ben, "You're absolutely right." And it was a coincidentally, I knew David Garrow because he had been one of our consultants when I was working on Eyes on the Prize too. So we reached out to David. We took an option on the book. We went out to Pittsburgh where David lives, and we spent 4 to 5 hours with him, interviewing him with a camera crew, talking about the genesis of the book, the material in the book, what he was hoping to try to unearth by writing the book. And then we did a sizzle reel, and we decided to try to raise the money. And that was like 2018. We didn't get a lot of love from a lot of different places. But finally, in the beginning of 2019, two companies, Field of Vision and Play Action, came on board with the funding, which enabled us to do the rest of our interviews in the fall of 2019.
We have a lot of discussions around probable cause, due process, especially post 9/11, right? Um, where, there's some people being detained at Guantanamo Bay for Lord knows how long. But it seems as though, like, the recordings, all of those things, definitely, in my opinion, violated his privacy. Talk a little bit about how the government was able to justify, because he wasn't a threat technically. He wasn't out, killing people. He wasn't involved. One of his core things was to be anti-violence so that these types of things wouldn't hurt the movement. But it seems as though the government was very loosey-goosey with the law. Talk a little bit about
I like that
how it's
term,
very
loosey
contradictory.
goosey, loosey goosey. Yeah, here, think about it this way. He may not have been what they call, an active physical threat, but he was an intellectual threat. The idea that he was galvanizing Black people in southern states and then also in northern cities to basically say, we want to be a part of mainstream society. The world of Jim Crow that we lived in should be no more. That had to be threatening to the powers that be. And one of the powers that be in place was J. Edgar Hoover, who was the director of the FBI. So when he and his agents thought that Dr. King was flirting with the Communist Party through his relationship with Stanley Levinson, they reached out to Bobby Kennedy, the Attorney General, and JFK's brother, and said, "We want to be able to monitor his going on." So they began to wiretap Dr. King, hoping to connect him with the Communist Party, which they felt could take him down, so he wouldn't be such an important leader. But lo and behold, as they were wiretapping, they came up with some other information that Dr. King had a very complicated personal life. And when they found that out, they thought, we found the brass ring. This will dethrone, this will destroy, this will defrock Dr. King and his presence and his importance to the movement and to African American people. If the African American community finds out that Dr. King is a womanizer, it'll destroy his standing as the minister of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, his standing as the leader of the civil rights movement. But back then, fortunately, the press didn't go into people's personal lives, so they didn't destroy King's reputation. But you got to know that King knew that he was being monitored, he was being wiretapped, he was having bugs in his hotel rooms. It had to be a burden on him. I mean, he was dealing with lots of burdens. He's dealing with being front and center the civil rights movement in cities like Birmingham and Albany, Georgia, and Selma, Alabama, and Chicago, Illinois. He's dealing with having to, corral all of his people from young James Bevel to Clarence Jones to Andy Young to Fred Shuttlesworth. He's dealing with the fact that here he's a young man, and then he's anointed with the Nobel Peace Prize, which gives him much more exposure. He's dealing with the fact that when they took a poll in the 60s, mid 60s, J. Edgar Hoover was more popular than Dr. King. Who I didn't even remember that. You're dealing with a man who by 1967 said to himself in his own conscience that I have to be more than just about the civil rights movement. I have to say to the country that the stance that we have about being interventionists in Vietnam we should not be there. And by doing that, he had to know that he was going to destroy his relationship with one of his closest allies, LBJ, and the Johnson administration. So I really tip my hat to the fact that King had to deal with so much in such a short span of time.
Absolutely. Expand a little bit about, we have such a love affair with the Kennedys, but it wasn't John F. K. that signed the Civil Rights Act. Everyone should know that, but a lot of people, unfortunately, are so enamored with the Kennedys that don't realize that he really didn't take the step. Oddly enough, it was the Southern guy from Texas that signed the act and said, it is time. You know what I mean? Talk about that relationship, because Black people, had helped get Kennedy elected, those that could vote. And there were especially Black entertainers that were very much advocating for him, but he did not advocate for Black people. Talk about that piece of it.
Well, and I know, Kathia, that John F. Kennedy had to be sort of pulled to the table. He didn't really want to support this movement, but he was almost pressured. There's a wonderful clip that I used in a film years ago where Harry Belafonte is talking about how he sat down with John F. Kennedy to talk about his role in the movement, and the importance of the movement. And even later on, when Bobby Kennedy started to change his stripes, how basically he had to have Bobby Kennedy recognize some of his missteps from earlier. So you're absolutely right. Here's this, I'm going to use this term today, this Southern cracker from Texas. Who would have thought that Lyndon Baines Johnson, the leader of the Great Society, would be the one that would be front and center with the Civil Rights, Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. It's like, you can't believe it, But remember, when I was a young man, I was 11 years old when John Kennedy was inaugurated as the President of the United States. And back then, him and Jackie Kennedy, Kathia, was Camelot, the handsome couple, John and Jackie Kennedy, with those two little beautiful kids, John Jr. and what's the daughter's name? I forget his daughter's name. Caroline, and they were our royalty, So that's why people sort of keep in their mind that he's the one, but it was really that Southern cracker who made it happen. Who knew how to cross the aisle.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, strange bedfellows, right?
He knew how to bring people together because he had been a senator for a long time. He knew how to play the game.
For sure. I would be remiss if I didn't bring the recent events, right?
What happened?
Especially as we are speaking about what people think makes America, like in terms of who belongs and who is an American, right? And it seems as though everything that you're showing in your film, we are still working our way through. Have we made progress? 1000%. I certainly wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting if it wasn't for my elders. But at the same token, we still have, and this isn't, I guess to best put it, what we think of what a racist person is not necessarily an uneducated Southern, poor laborer. A lot of these people at the Capitol are doctors, lawyers, elected officials, business owners, but they're really, really frightened of this melting pot that really is America. Talk about how we have not learned to understand that that is the country, but at the same time, not learned that racism is the cancer also of this country.
You and I both know it's in the DNA of America. What we saw last Wednesday, remember these images of people smashing in windows, climbing into the building, the Capitol building, going to Speaker Pelosi's office, tearing it apart, you know, breaking down, knocking on doors, going into the Senate chamber. When I watched those images, I was angry, I was disgusted, but it didn't say to me it was an anomaly, because all it did was say to me, flashback, 1921, Black community of Tulsa. The white people say, we heard that a white woman was touched by a Black man. It was those people in that community that's growing and successful. They're the perpetrators. We got to go in there, take them out. You know, this is a part of America that you and I both know has existed since after slavery, you know, after Reconstruction with Jim Crow. You know, anytime white Americans feel like they're being put upon, they're being disenfranchised, their idea is burn the house down, burn it down. That's that philosophy. And you're right. It crosses all strata, economic and social strata of white people. Those who are the elite basically tell those who are the working class, you do the dirty work, but we're supporting you. Look at Trump. You know, you can't stand for this. I'm going to follow you down there. What did he do? He went back to the White House, you know?
Oh, he did. Yeah,
definitely.
That's the part a lot of people missed, you know. I'm with you. And then it was like, whoop, in the limo, you know.
And you said it right. This is a cancer. It's a cancer in this country. And some people, Black people don't think this like this. Some people don't think, well, this is just an aberration. No. It's not an aberration. It's embedded in the soil of the history of America.
Sounds like it.
And then some people, if the country ever wants to come to some kind of real change, and you're right, there has been progress, they got to deal with the fact that the notion of systemic racism exists. I mean, listen, just last week, the young man who was shot in the back, what happened to that police officer? Nothing. I mean, it was on tape. It was shot on a cell phone. I mean, it was, how could you not think that this guy should not have been prosecuted?
What's the saying, right? They said it's the same old thing, except it's now on camera. That's the thing that's changed. And you can document it and you can see it. But how do we help young people? Lastly, I do want to say that there is a disconnect. Some of it you can say is in the schools, you know. Maybe we as certain generations are not doing a good enough job of showing, you know, our history, sharing our history.
We need forums, we need community organizing meetings, so we can bring young people in here, young Black people, starting at the age of 9 and 10, to give them a history lesson, you know, a history lesson. When I was 11 and 12, I had some men, you know, Black men who gave me a history lesson about, you know, what was happening in the 40s and 50s with Jim Crow, what happened when Malcolm X came along. You know, I got history lessons, you know, about what Black people had to struggle with and had to confront every day in this country. And we still do, you know. We need to be educating our young people so they understand this, you know, because none of us, not a person of color should be saying this is a surprise. It's not a surprise.
No, what? Somebody tweeted it out best. Black people, this is not our business. Drink your water and stay indoors, you know, because technically we weren't invited, not that we would want to be, and B, this is not our fight, you know, because our needs and our issues don't align with that. That was never to be for us, even though, you know, you may have had the 4 or 5, whatever people that look like us.
I saw a few. You know what
I mean, I did too. I mean, I'm seeing the brother in the Capitol and I'm going like, what are you doing?
You know what you say? I say the same thing you said. I was watching some footage last night. There was a special on CNN, And I saw this brother in there, and I said to myself, brother, why are you there, man? And then there was an interview with this white guy and his young black woman who were both part of that craziness. And I thought, what is she? What Kool-Aid has she drank?
I hope, you know what, I'm glad you made your film. I really enjoyed speaking to you, because I do think that if we don't learn from history, we are bound to repeat it. There's some parts of history I'm interested in repeating. These are certain parts of history that I'm not. And I hope as we are in these unique times, it inspires people, like you said, especially younger people, to activate and to get involved, not just every 4 years, but as you said, as
All the
in the
time.
local, all the
And
time.
we should
Yeah,
be very happy at what happened in Georgia.
yes,
What
yes,
Stacey Abrams and others did in galvanizing the community, to put
absolutely.
Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff in office. That's what you need to do. Get out there and get people to participate.
And use the system. Use the
Use
system
the system.
in our favor,
Exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. It was absolutely a pleasure. I wish you much success with the film. And, I really appreciate you taking the time out.